you mentioned that the fantasy of race is beginning to fade and the powers that be are beginning to fade. I don't want people to believe that. And so when it comes to differentiating between racism and race is the disease, racism is the symptom. And race is more powerful in American society today than it was 100 years ago. There is what I refer to as race capital. And we all know it, though we often reject it because in many cases, the people who are rejecting that it exists are the ones who lay claim to the capital itself. We know that the University of Harvard is under suit, and we talked about this, for a variety of different factors, but on a discrimination lawsuit on the basis of the way that people check the box on admissions. Well, those who check the box of Asian don't have as great a capital when trying to get into Ivy League institutions. They may have a greater capital claim when trying to get a mortgage or when trying to get certain scholarships. And so because of this capital system that's being more deeply intertwined around the concept of race, we have to be careful to not ignore that, because if we ignore that, the power of race itself will engulf us all, and then we'll never let it go. I've talked to people who say that they will not ever let go of the concept of race, not now, because Adrian, don't you know that if you check the box of Black on this college application, that your son has a better chance of not only getting into the institution, but also has a greater chance of getting scholarships and funding? So because of these, or you name it, I'm not just saying Black. If you check the box of Hispanic, don't you know that you can get these advantages and benefits in these institutions? And some would call this necessary, but I call it perpetual. And so I don't want to make the mistake of believing, generally speaking, societally speaking, that race has lost its power, because it is now more powerful, most likely, than it's ever been in society. And those who advocate for the concept of race and using it for their particular benefit only perpetuate the nefarious ideology that killed so many, that destroyed so many. And I just will never take part in that. Not with my enlightenment now. I will never take part in that. Read Ta-Nehisi Coates. He talks about the Black experience and how no matter how wealthy you are, no matter how educated you are, no matter how prestigious or how celebratorious you are, you're still just a Black man in America. And when we talk about the challenges that exist, what we must understand that our challenges are uniquely different as well. So what my children will face in their current or potential future environment may be vastly different than what the kid on the south side of Chicago may experience, may be vastly different than what the kid in New Orleans may experience, may be vastly different than the kid in the Appalachian foothills may experience. And so I try to teach my children about what they can expect from their surroundings and their community, knowing that they may live somewhere else, but I can't cover the entire world of problems. And so I speak to people about their specific issues and try to help address those, knowing that those issues are going to change. But when they learn how to overcome issues writ large, then one is just as same as the other. Covered a lot.
Yeah, I have to disagree with some of it. I have heard that part before. That race is more powerful than ever because there are benefits associated with checking a certain box. I think that I have a hard time understanding how you could come to that conclusion after having studied the issue, to be honest, because those benefits are paltry compared to the power that has been exerted even 100 years ago by people using those categories. So like, it's really hard for me to understand how you could believe it's more powerful now than back then, given what happened back then. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear there again, the terminology that I use in race is not just limited to skin color. And this is the phenotypical racial classification system in America reduces the concept of race to the color-coded race. If we examine throughout history how people have been grouped together or classified, what we have in society today of literally paying people, we literally pay people to assimilate into these social structures, and this has never really happened before. Wait.
What do you mean? What are you talking about right now?
So this used to be an elitist. If you go back to 100 years or 1,000 years throughout various societies around the world, those who benefited from different classifications were the most elitist. If you go back 100 years where the KKK was in power, not everybody who burned a cross in the backyard and wore a white sheet and a hood on their head had influential power. It was the grand wizard and the governors and the superintendents, those who were in power. It was elitist. But now, this power of checking boxes to get power, it spans across the masses. So anybody who wants to identify with these racial groups, irrespective of anything else that you've done in life, you can get some of that power. I can have someone completely fired from their job just based on how I identify within these groups.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's reality. You cannot get someone fired from your job just because of how you identify. That is just not. Yeah. No, you can't. Okay, it's not reality, Adrian. Like, I mean, I don't know how you can say that with a straight face. Like, I mean, why would you ever believe that?
Well, so I personally wouldn't, though. Where I live in my community in North Georgia, I can speak to a specific case where people have been fired from their jobs for things that I would consider trivial because the person who was offended has claimed that they were in a marginalized or disenfranchised group. And so this does happen. And it doesn't just have to be limited to skin shade.
Can you give us an example? I feel like I can't pass this by. I have to understand. I hear the words you're saying, but like, this is a reality that's foreign to me. Okay, so I have to hear what actually happened. What did someone say? What was the process of evaluating the claims, and then what actions were taken?
Yeah. So for the sake of anonymity, I'll use various scenarios if I may. So there are many cases that are documented, not just where I live, but I was saying that specifically because of having been close to various scenarios like this. But you can examine where take Whoopi Goldberg, for example, right? This has been something that's been in the news headlines of late from various talking heads. People have talked about how Whoopi Goldberg made a statement on a show called The View, where she was expressing her views. Now, whether those were educated views, unlearned views, whatever those views were, those were her personal views. But yet she was suspended. Now, if she wasn't as influential as she was, she probably would have been fired. But she was suspended because of her view of offending a group of people who identified a certain way. An entire class or entire group of people were allegedly seen to be offended by her statements, just simple statements. No one would say that she was intentionally, being pernicious or evil, but many people would say that she was somewhat educated, which we could take an entire hour discussing her comments. But the point I wanted to make is that in America today, a person could simply make a statement that has no intention of evil, that has no intention of malice, and lose their job for it. And it can happen only because the group to which they are speaking feels offended.
Do you think that this is a new phenomenon?
No, I don't.
This has been going on for so long that I'm just like, I'm a little bit like, I don't understand what's so novel about this. In fact, I think the power that you're talking about has been extremely limited. Like the whoopee, it may be seemingly increasing right now, and maybe it is slightly, but like,
yeah, it is.
I mean, compared to 100 years ago,
Yeah.
I can't understand how you would believe that still.
Well, so what's changed, I think, in the past 100 years is how those things become increasingly more minute that can get you fired. And so if you go back 100 years, Whoopi Goldberg probably wouldn't have had the job in the first place.
Right.
And so
I mean, doesn't that end this conversation? Like, that's my point.
But I'm not just speaking specifically to the Whoopi Goldbergs. I'm speaking to anybody who has a statement, a voice, a position that deviates from the mainstream narrative. That person could completely lose their source of employment by making a statement that is not rooted in malice, by making a statement that's not rooted in evil or ill intent. And if you go back even just 100 years ago, that didn't happen. Not nearly as much.
It definitely
not
happened.
Not nearly as much.
It definitely happened. You've always had to toe the line. That's how things operate here. And so, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't have the data on how much it happened back then, how much is happening now.
It's unquantifiable.
Yeah, I don't know. But, like, all I know is that you've always had to toe the line. Like, there was always been things that you could or couldn't say. It's changed over time, what that is and whatnot. And maybe that's what you're talking about is
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
You feel like now it's trivial things you could say that could get you to lose your employment. I know that that's a thing that people are trying to put out there, cancel culture, you know, this idea that you can just be fired, you know, for nothing. But in my research of these scenarios that people use to try to claim that this is a thing that's happening, it's not happening. So, like, that is why I'm skeptical, because I look into the details of these situations that people use, and that's why I asked you about the details, because ultimately the details reveal that that's not what happens. Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.